All right, guys, some major changes are coming to CNN. This is really interesting. So we'll go through this article in a second. There's a story that came out about a week ago which said that CNN is now committed to no longer violating or overusing the breaking news banner, because there was a time where they, like, literally any story at all, they would put breaking news. And the reason why they did that, just so everybody understands, is they got phenomenal ratings every time there was actually breaking news. So they decided, well, let's just rig the system and always say there's breaking news, so that'll make more people tune in. That was their thinking. It was very sort of like cheap and sleazy and kind of nefarious to just trick people into watching their shows because nobody would want to watch them free of their own volition. So the classic example, and I remember covering this at the time in like 2014, they did breaking news: the Titanic sank 102 years ago today. That is the opposite of breaking news. You are 102 years late for the breaking news. Like, that's how much you missed it by. Astonishing. So anyway, that's a positive development. No more abusing the breaking news banner. But look at this. CNN evaluating partisan talent. They say, CNN's new boss, Chris Licht, is evaluating whether personalities and programming that grew polarizing during the Trump era can adapt to the network's new priority to be less partisan. If talent cannot adjust to a less partisan tone and strategy, they could be ousted. 3 sources familiar with the matter tell Axios. Now, let me pause there. Less partisan, I think, is a good thing, because partisan just means it's party politics. It's like you're either pro-Republican or pro-Democrat, right? If you're saying less partisan, that's good. But I don't think they mean just less partisan. We'll continue. If talent cannot adjust to a less partisan tone and strategy, they could be ousted. 3 sources familiar with the matter tell Axios. So some people are on the chopping block, man. Some people are on the chopping block. I would guess like Don Lemon is one of those people. Maybe Brian Stelter is one of those people. Licht wants to give personalities that may appear polarizing a chance to prove they're willing to uphold the network's values so they don't tarnish CNN's journalism brand. Too little too late for that, dog. There is no good journalism brand left for CNN. They're already a joke. For on-air talent, that includes engaging in respectful interviews that don't feel like PR stunts. For producers and bookers, that includes making programming decisions that are focused on nuance, not noise. CNN's tone became more partisan and combative during the Trump era and under the leadership of former CNN President Jeff Zucker. To conservative critics, some on-air personalities like Jim Acosta and Brian Stelter have become the face of the network's liberal shift. All right. So let me pause here for a second. When you talk about during the Trump era, how should CNN have acted? Now, I will gladly admit, CNN is super cringe, and they are Democratic elitists. So they're generally pro-Democratic Party, but they have very like hollow, vapid, liberal arguments. So in other words, yes, they were super anti-Trump, but the way in which they were anti-Trump was always not really that substantive. It was always like, let's flip out over his latest tweet, or let's get mad because he said something that, was offensive. It was never like, holy shit, he just cut taxes for the rich and raised taxes on the poor, because after however many years it was, taxes go up on the poor under that bill that they passed in 2017. It was never really policy focused and substantive and like intelligent. It was always like annoying and cringe and shrill. And so now my issue was not that they went after Trump. It is bad to go after Trump. It was like, can you please go after Trump in a more intelligent way? Under this model that they're laying out now, it seems to me like they want, don't even go after him too hard. Like, yeah, you could go after him, but you can't go after him hard. Like, you have to sort of balance everything and make it neutral. That looks like to me the direction they're going, and I'll explain in a little bit why that doesn't make any sense at all. Licht doesn't want to necessarily shy away from personality programming, especially in primetime, but he wants to ensure that partisan voices don't dominate in a way that harms CNN, as source notes. Licht took the helm at CNN last month, shortly after longtime CNN president Jeff Zucker exited the network in scandal. His priorities are widely seen as aligned with the leadership of CNN parent Warner Brothers Discovery. CNN did not comment. Licht and Warner Bros. Discovery CEO David Zaslav haven't been shy about their goal of dialing back on partisan and alarmist programming in favor of traditional journalism. Last week, Licht told employees in a memo that the network has added a breaking news guidelines. That's what we just talked about before. Licht said he agrees with complaints from people on both inside and outside the organization that the network overuses the breaking news banner. We are truth tellers focused on informing, not alarming our viewers, he said in the note obtained by Axios. Zaslav and mentor and investor John Malone have been public about their wish to pull CNN away from progressive commentary. I would like to see CNN evolve back. They're not progressive, by the way. They are pro-Democratic Party. That's totally different. I would like to see CNN evolve back to the kind of journalism that it started with and actually have journalists which would be unique and refreshing. Okay. So here's what they're going to do. Basically what they're trying to do, to sum it up, is go back to CNN Original. Now, what is CNN Original? CNN Original is inoffensive and neutrality-based. That's what it is. So it's banal, it's bland, but by extension, it's not offensive because of that. And also, it's just don't try your best to not rub anybody the wrong way. So always present both sides of everything. Now, in theory, that might sound like an intelligent thing, but there are plenty of areas in which that's not an intelligent thing. It's actually a really dumb thing. So, for example, on climate change, at this late date, do you want to debate the merits of climate change? No, you don't. And CNN, back in the day, they had Bill Nye the Science Guy versus Marsha Blackburn, a Republican congresswoman who's a climate denier and takes money from ExxonMobil, and had them debate climate change. Way back in the day, they debated, like, creationism versus evolution. Like, so that's where that leads you. That neutrality focus leads you down the wrong path. Now, it's tough to say. Is it going to be an upgrade over what it is currently? It might be a little bit of an upgrade, but it's still a shitty idea, is my point. And actually, I don't know. I think it's debatable. You could also say it's not really an upgrade because these things are equally bad. It's equally bad to be rah-rah pro-Democratic Party in a really vapid way that's not substantive. And it's also bad to be, neutral at all costs, where you're always trying to hear both sides of the issue, and so you're painting a misleading picture to the world that everything is debatable and everything's up in the air. I'll leave it up to you guys to determine. I could see an argument for saying those things are equally bad. I can see an argument for saying that the neutral approach is actually slightly better just because it's a little more palatable. But really, and this is what they'll never get right because there's a financial incentive not to get it right, is what you should do is objectivity journalism. So not pro-Democratic Party propaganda so-called journalism and not neutrality so-called journalism. Do objective journalism. So what that means is tell the truth no matter where it leads you, no matter how offensive or inoffensive it might be. So give the facts, give the information, and then you could have people give their opinion. That's totally fine, but the facts and the information have to come first. And I don't think they're ever going to do that because, in my opinion, if you really put all the facts out there and have a reasonable interpretation of the facts, then you would be very, very critical of the way our entire system functions. You would be very critical of virtually every aspect of American political life and economic life. You would see that the whole thing is basically a giant scam. You would call for stuff like universal health care and universal education and ending the wars and more unionization. That, I think, is an objective take based on the facts. Hey, here are the facts. Things are bleak. Here are the solutions. That's what they should do, but they would never do that because if you do journalism like that and commentary like that, you are going to piss off the moneyed interest that funds CNN. You are going to piss off the advertisers. They don't want somebody on there saying we should raise taxes on these advertisers, on these giant corporations. We should redistribute this money. They don't want anybody saying that. So there's a financial incentive to not have the proper journalism and commentary business model. So they're never going to get there. They're going to yo-yo back and forth, just like MSNBC did. They yo-yo back and forth between, like, we're so-called progressive, really they're rah-rah Democrat. And then they go back to, no, we're going to try to be, like, more neutral and serious and down the middle. And that's where CNN is now. They went hard pro-Democrat during the Trump years, and now they're trying to pivot back to let's just be neutral and boring. Both of those things are not good, and both of those things will give us terrible, terrible ratings. So that's something to keep in mind. Because at the end of the day, if their goal is really to get more eyeballs and get more ad money, well, they'll probably get the ad money, but the eyeballs are not coming. Because CNN Original was never that interesting in the first place. So that's where we are. Major changes at CNN. Brian Stelter might be on the chopping block. Acosta might be on the chopping block. Don Lemon might be on the chopping block. They're going to have to reel it in and get a hell of a lot less partisan. And we'll see how it goes. Hey, y'all, do me a favor and like and subscribe. It helps out big time in the algorithm. Click the bell as well for notifications when videos drop. And watch that video on screen right now. You want to.